I'm Paul Brown, Queen's Counsel, and our speaker this afternoon has been Christine Thorby from the Planning Inspectorate. Christine's been with PINS for 15 years. She's currently a group manager for planning there, and has also been a caseworker and a member of the working group, or steering group, on the inquiries review, which is being led by Bridget Rosewell. And Christine's been explaining a little bit about what it is like to be an inspector, the sorts of pressures that they work under, the constraints in terms of time, how far in advance of cases they get to look at the papers, really with a view to providing us with some background information on how, as consultants and lawyers, we can best help the Inspectorate, both in terms of reaching a good decision, but also acting in the interests of our client in terms of getting information across. So, Christine, thank you for a really enlightening paper this afternoon. If I were to ask you to summarise the sorts of do's and don'ts for an advocate or a witness, are there any things any sort of key messages that you would want to get across?
Yes, I think really for inspectors, we're dealing with information and understanding the information and understanding the cases that are put to us. So it's about clarity, and it's about being succinct and focused so that we can get to the matters quickly, we can see where they are, we can understand them, and we can make a decision.
And so in terms of simplicity of layout and heading out evidence, for example, signposting things with headings and...
Yes, making sure that you signposting, do paginate everything and just tell me where things are. So there's organisation of the information, which is hugely helpful. And then there's the content as well. Keep making sure that the content is put in straightforward language, easy to absorb, and just really keeping it brief and focused, I think.
So for proofs of evidence, are there any particular bugbears, for example, in the way people set out planning policy background or guidance and those sorts of things?
Yes, I think what I would say about that is if you have a statement of common ground, for example, you can put a lot of information in there which you need not repeat in your proof about national policy and about your local policies. So try and keep your proof to your case. So that's your evidence. Try and keep it to that, and don't put a lot of other information in that means that I can't find your argument. The more you put in about sort of extraneous things, the more difficult it is for me to actually get to the nub of your case, and it can actually obscure the argument by putting too much in. So for proofs, just keep them really focused and tight around the arguments.
And on the day, any particular tips for either for witnesses or for advocates?
On the day, it's the big day. We know everybody's nervous. For advocates, I think it's helping the witnesses to unlock information for the inspector. So certainly at the outset, it's very useful to have a short opening. You set out your case, your evidence in chief. A lot of it we can take as read. So it's about kind of setting out the really key things, which are usually the differences between the parties. The same for cross-examination, trying to keep that brief and to the point, and not too long-winded, because again, you do begin to lose the really key arguments. So I do want to say a bit about closings. We find those enormously helpful. Closings tend to be the documents that we turn to first of all when we come to write the decision. So closings are great, and we really appreciate those. For witnesses, it sounds silly, but do answer the question. Do answer the question. It may just be yes and no, and then you can qualify it. But don't be afraid just to say it like it is, because schemes are generally they turn on many things.
There will be good and bad on.
They'll be good and bad on all sides. So just kind of be realistic, answer the question.
And I think one of the points you made about technical witnesses is that, okay, there is a level of technical information that needs to be put across, but it really helps the Inspectorate if you can explain that from a human perspective.
Yes, that's right. So there's a lot of technical evidence that comes before inspectors, and it's turning that into the human experience or the landscape or the building or whatever it affects, and putting it into a language that is very clear. So you have technical evidence, we know methodology, and then the results, and then what we're looking for is the consequences. So it's the consequences to people and places that we're really looking for with technical evidence.
And just in terms of ways in which the system might change, one of the things that you spoke about was technology, digital revolution, possibly going to paperless inquiries. Obviously, we're not there at this stage, but could you just help us with where you think we are going in that?
Well, we do have a programme of transformation, that's digital transformation, and we're looking at getting as much information digitised and using it in that way as possible. We know that we're not really set up to run events electronically yet, not where everybody has equal access to the information, and but that's where we want to get to. I think that's much more of a working together with other parties and seeing how we can enable that to move forwards. And we know that, for example, in local authority chambers, they're getting much more geared up to having screens and to having information on screens. So it probably isn't that far in the future, but we're not there yet. Yeah.
And finally, the review into the inquiries as a mode of appeal. I appreciate at the moment where the call for evidence hasn't yet closed, so there's probably a limit to what you can say. But how is that going, and when can we expect, or what can we expect from the end of that process?
Yes, that's been very, very interesting for me as an inspector to listen. There's certainly lots and lots of good ideas coming forward about how to improve the process. The inspector end is the bit that I'm involved with, and there's all kinds of ideas that we know exist about making better use of statements of common ground, inspectors being more directive earlier on. So these are things that we have known about, and the inquiries review is shining a light on. And we'll see what happens when, after the call of evidence and that information is reviewed.
And any ideas on when we can expect an outcome?
End of the year, I think. I don't know. Don't quote me.
All right. Well, that's a watch this space then.
Watch this space.
All right. Christine, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Paul.